and he wrote this song, Many Things. On the 18th day of May, the union called the strike. The planters and the bosses, they throw the people out of their sight. There are many things happening in this land. There are many things happening in this land. Where the union's going hard and the union's growing strong. There are many things happening in this land. When the planners told the people want to their land, for many years they spent in the cold, hard winter time, had to live in tents. There are many things happening in this land. There are many things happening in this land. Too much cotton in our sacks, but we have none on our backs. There are many things happening in this land. There are many things happening in this land. There are many things happening in this land. Too much groceries on the shelf, but we have none for ourselves. There are many things happening in this land. There are many things happening in land. This next song is called Three Chords and the Truth, and it's written in honor of singer-songwriters who practice that art of simple songs that have something to say, something big to say. So the first verse is about Joe Hill, a union organizer who was put to death in Utah in 1915 for his union activities. The second verse is about Paul Robeson, famous folk, opera, political activist, theater, amazing artist. And the last verse is about Pete Seeger. Well, I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night, standing in a prison yard. They're taking poor Joe, chaining him down to a tall fire squad. He turned and he looked at me right then. He said, "Don't you be misled. They're trying to tear our free speech down, and what they do with it. When they framed me on the killing charge, you know I wouldn't lie to you. The only crime here that I've done was three chords and truth. Three chords and truth. The only crime that Joe Hill done was three chords and truth. He sang his union songs real good. He got his message through. They couldn't stand to hear a working man sing. Oh, J. Edgar Hoover you'd like to hear the darkies sing, and 1 minute changed that all around. Paul Robeson was a man you couldn't ignore, like old Jacob was down. He called up his New York boyfriends, something good for you. Get on up there, be still now, you feel free. The only crime you ever got from Paul was the well, this is the land of democracy. Posters down. What was it Paul Robeson set free? Whether it took Pete Seeger before the law put him on the witness stand, he stood right up to Terry with just a banjo in his hand. Such a he was a man just wouldn't back down. They couldn't stand they were organized. So this next song was one of mine. It's called Morning Song, and I wrote this song actually not for Pete Seeger to sing, but I wrote the song in honor of him because I was at his house one summer and he was telling me how he gets up every morning and sings a song. That's how he starts his day. And I thought that was really cool. So I wrote this song called Morning Song. That's for Pete. Sing a song in the morning sun, sing it loud and strong. Sing a song when the sun goes up, sing a morning song. We will see how it will be when we turn this thing around. We will know which way to go, following the sound. Sing a song, sing it loud and strong. Sing a song when the sun won't come. Sing a song when the sun can be just as we want it to be. When we stand hand in hand, solidarity. Sing a song, sing it loud and strong. Sing it loud, sing a morning song. Here's another one of mine. So I wrote this song, You Can't Giddy Up by Certain Wolf. Oh, my name. My name is Joe Uline. When all is said and done, I want more done than said. Seems like in this world of ours, you just can't get ahead. We bailed out those bankers real quick when they messed things up. The rest of us left holding the bag. For me, I've had enough. Oh, you can't get up by saying, whoa, ain't gonna get you where you wanna go. No time for moving slow. Can't get up by saying, whoa. Hey! So as I'm looking around the room, I'm seeing a lot of fighters. But because it is the month where women get special honor, they should get year-round. But for this event, I decided to add this Joe Hill song to my song list in honor of all the women. And I was thinking back to the Keystone civil disobedience, the arrest that Bill McKibben also led, like, I don't know, 10 years ago or something. And I look around, all the arrests, and there's May Boovy, there's Ray Grove, there's Lena Moffett. There's all these women in the lead of that particular civil disobedience and action. So I thought, I gotta sing this song. Joe Hill wrote it for Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, who was a radical. He calls it Rebel Girl. There are women of many descriptions in this world, as everyone knows. Some are living in beautiful mansions. Some are wearing the finest of clothes. There's the blue-blooded queen, princess, who have charms made of diamonds and pearls. But the only thoroughbred lady is the rebel. She's a rebel, the rebel. To the working class, she's strength of this world from me. With the rest, hold her hands may be hardened by labor, and her dress may not be so fine, but the heart in her bosom is beating for her class and for her time. And the best that they cannot say, she got to defend the workers' rights. The thoroughbred lady is the rebel. She's the rebel girl. Working class, it's the strength of this world. From Maine to Georgia, you'll see. Fighting for you and for me. She's there by your side, in courage and pride, with the industrial workers of the world. And it's great to fight for freedom with the rebel. Yes, it's great to fight for freedom with the rebel. Rebel girl. I think I got time for two more. Is that right, Bob? So I'm going to do one, Bob, that you requested. So how many people in the room have heard Iris DeMent's new record and her new song called Working on a World? Somebody. Well, I highly recommend it. It's only been out for a couple of weeks, so I'm going to do the title track right now. And then the song that Bob Mullenkamp requested is called Banks of Marble. And I really want you all to sing on that one. In fact, I'll do that first and cue you. I'll teach you your part. So your part is, the banks are made of marble, with the guard at every door. The vaults are stuffed with silver that the farmers sweated for. Or you'll see it's a farmer, the miner, but you gotta sing. I didn't hear anybody. I saw you, yes, I can tell. I remember a very early Pete Seeger concert I went to with my parents, and I wasn't singing. And he did this at concerts all the time. He just like pointed right at me and he said, "Hey, what's wrong with you? You're not singing." And I was like 9 years old or something. So I was a little intimidated by that. And I haven't mastered his art of getting people to sing. I want you to sing on this. Well, I travel around this country, from shore to shining shore, and it really made me wonder the things I heard and saw. When I saw the weary farmer growing sod and bone, and I heard the auction hammer just a knocking down his door. Come on now. The banks are made of marble, with the guard at every door. And the vaults are stuffed with silver that the farmer sweated for. Well, I've seen the weary miner scrubbing coal dust from his back, and I heard his children crying, "Got no corn to eat the shack." But the banks are made of marble, with the guard at every door. And the vaults are stuffed with silver that the miners sweated for. Well, I've seen good people working all across this mighty land, and I pray we get together and together make a stand, that we own those banks of marble, with the guard and we share the vault of silver that we all have sweated for. One more time. And we own those banks of marble, with the guard at every door. And we share the vault of silver that we all have sweated for. And I see that our guest of honor has arrived, so I'll do one more song. Is that okay? Yeah. One more song. This song was just released a few weeks ago by Iris DeMent. Bill, have you heard her new record yet? And the new song? So I figured you may have. But as soon as I heard it, it's like, I got to learn that title track, and that's a damn good song. It's called Workings for a World. I got so down in trouble, nearly lost my head. Started waking every morning, filled with sadness, fear, and dread. The world I took for granted was crashing to the ground. I may not be old enough to ever see it turn around. Yeah, but then I got to thinking of the ones who came before, and all the sacrifices that they made open up so many doors. Doors I got to walk through, on streets paid for me, by people who are working on a world they'll never see. I'm working on a world I may never see. I'm joining forces with the warriors of love who came before and will follow you and me. I wake up in the morning knowing I'm privileged to be. And I'm here working on a world I will never see. I don't have all the answers to the troubles of the day. With our ancestors, they persevered anyway. And when I see a little baby holding out its arms to me, I remember why I'm working, for I'll never see. I'm working on a world I may never see. I'm joining forces with the warriors of love who came before, will follow you and me. I get up in the morning, knowing I'm privileged just to be down here working on a world I could never see. Down here working on a world I will never see. Thank you all very much. I'll see you in the morning. Joe, you on. How many of you want me there tomorrow? Be there at 11:15 and hear Joe and the U-liners open the day. Okay? Be there at 11:15, hear them open the day. I'm Bob Mullenkamp. I have the honor of serving on the organizing committee for tomorrow's event. And I also have the honor of introducing someone who, if anyone ever in this room needed no introduction, it's our speaker. But wait a minute. So look, for all of us, Bill McKibben in 1989 wrote the first book ever for popular consumption that alerted the world to the dangers of global warming. The End of Nature in 1989. He's written a lot since then. He has led this movement to try to save this planet. I think it's safe to say he is the preeminent leader of our generation to fight the climate crisis. And very recently, something he's especially proud of is his new memoir, The Flag, the Cross, and the Station Wagon. If you haven't read it, read it. It's terrific. I get no credit, nothing for that. But it's really a wonderful book, so read it. And even more important, Bill is speaking at the rally tomorrow. He's joining the march tomorrow, and at the end of the march, he's joining the Rocking Chair Rebellion. Bill McKibben.
Well, what fun to be here. What fun to walk in and hear Joe Uline playing away. What fun to see so many people that we've worked with for so long, and what months of hard organizing to get ready for this day. First thing to be said is many thanks to everybody here. There's 100 rallies going on across the country tomorrow, but there is no question that people in DC have worked unbelievably hard and come up with what is not only the most comprehensive of those 100 rallies, but perhaps the most comprehensive rally ever about anything. The sheer number of parts is just beyond belief. I'm eager to head out as soon as we're done here to go see the vigilers out spending the night out in the rocking chairs by the banks. And I want to tell you, well, let me say first, it's really fun, it turns out, to be organizing with some people our age. Not only are they extremely organized in all those ways, they're also good about things like having things happen early enough in the evening that one does. And it's been beautiful because, A, young people who have done most of the work in this movement over the years are extremely relieved to have some backup. I cannot tell you the number of people who have just come up and said, thanks. We sort of thought we'd been left to deal with this on our own. It's not a good time in this world to be 19 or 22 or 14 or something, because it feels like there's an awful lot coming at you, and that people feel like they've been listened to and responded to is a big deal. Second thing that y'all have done is really re-energize in a lot of ways this climate movement, this environmental justice movement. You know, we were at a real high point in the fall of 2019. There were 6, 7, 8 million kids mostly out on school strike around the world, huge rallies. And that's actually when all this was supposed to go on. I mean, it was supposed to come next. Reverend Yearwood, who you'll see tomorrow, and I were arrested at the Chase Bank up by Eastern Market in January of 2020 with Jane Fonda on the other side of the glass egging us on and things. And that was supposed to be the launch, and there were supposed to be demonstrations like this Earth Day 2020. Well, COVID put paid to that. And it's been a long time without people being really out in the streets. There's been some people went up to Minnesota to fight Line 3, and there's been great work of that kind, and down in Atlanta and on and on. But in this case, we're on offense. We're not playing defense against some terrible project. We are on offense, taking our message to the bad guys and doing it as powerfully as we can. And it has brought everybody back out. It's going to be exciting tomorrow when this rally is taking place, because Reverend Yearwood will be there to speak, but so will the new head of Greenpeace, Ebony Martin, and so will the new head of the Sierra Club, Ben Jealous. And when you see them, you'll see that the environmental movement is changing in profound ways. It's pretty important that the former head of the NAACP is now the head of the Sierra Club, and the kind of uniting of those movements. And the good news is, I mean, I talked with Ben last week, and he was like, we're bringing the organizing chops of the NAACP to work at the Sierra Club, which is our biggest, broadest environmental nonprofit. It's going to be a powerful few years, and it begins tomorrow in a big way. Now, we're not going to win this particular fight tomorrow. Ben Cushing and I were on the phone with one of these 4 big banks this week, and it was good to see them listening, and they're clearly well aware of our presence. But these guys are literally the capital in capitalism. Okay, these are the 4 biggest pools of money on planet Earth, and so it's going to take a while to move them. But I tell you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because we organize, and it's going to happen because the Earth is going to demonstrate what we're coming out of. What should have been a few cool years on this planet with the La Nina currents in the Pacific cooling the ocean. And we're headed into a very hot period now, a new El Nino. We'll almost certainly see record temperatures on this planet that we haven't seen before. And it's going to be our last real moment to try and seize the moment and force the changes that have to be made. And it's a good thing that we come into that organized and ready to go. A lot of organizing to do, but tomorrow is key because tomorrow we'll get good coverage and press coverage and stuff, although as usual, I think our former president may do his best to step on things. But I'm not worried about that. What I want tomorrow, what we need tomorrow, is the collection of amazing images from around the country that we can use for the next year or two to power this movement to make this case. And of those images, none is going to be more beautiful or more important than those rocking chairs out in front of the fence. That was absolutely inspired, you know, because it is about time that people of our age came with everything we've got into this. We're going to be sitting down tomorrow, but we're really standing up as a generation to demand change. And there are 70 million of us. 10,000 more people have their 60th birthday every day. That's more people than are born in this country every day now. Okay? So the onus on us to use the structural power that we have assembled over these years is very real. And to watch, and the good news is people are figuring it out. I've heard in the last week from good organizers in Canada, in Belgium, in Australia, in France. It's like, when are we going to have third act here? And I'm like, well, give us another few months to get things. Heather, you know, we have to get a little more work to get things fully under control in the U.S. and all of that. But this idea is really, really important. It's so powerful to be in a room with organizers like the people here, with Heather and Bob and Joe and Ted Click and just 1,000 other people who have done incredible work for so long and who now have this wealth of experience to help lead us all. The best news, though, is that there are tens of thousands of people across the country who've never done anything like this before and are now fully engaged. I stopped on the way to the airport in Burlington, Vermont, at the senior center where there were 30 or 40 people busily making signs, banners, posters for tomorrow. Completely together, there were reporters all over the place. They were completely ready to go. It was just exciting to see how excited they were, how ready to do this and how ready to keep on doing it for as long as it takes, or as long as we've got, or whichever comes first, It turns out that there's a certain liberating power about being a little closer to the exit than you are to the entrance, and people are bringing that energy in profound, dramatic ways. It's going to be very exciting over this next fall, and you guys are in at the very start. the literal ground floor, you know, the climate fight, all these fights, the other fights that we're involved in for democracy, these are all hard. And there's no guarantee that we're going to win them. We don't know. The IPCC report that came out this afternoon was as devastating a document as human beings have ever written. It's talking about the fact that we are teetering on the edge of the breakdown of the physical systems that have governed our planet since at least the point that our species emerged, and about them happening in real time over the next 5 and 10 years. So this is a really hard fight, and we don't know if we're going to win, but damn it, we know that we're going to fight with everything we've got, and that's all we can ask. Thank you very much.
Bill, do you want to engage in some dialogue?
Yes, I'd be happy to.
People have
Well, what's your
questions? Anyone? Engage Bill while he's here in a dialogue about. Tell us more about the report.
about the
ICC
IPCC report?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the horrible news, the horrible truth about climate stuff is, in some sense, there's never anything new. I mean, I wrote the first book about this in 1989 when I was 28, and we knew everything then that we know now, basically. It's just that we keep now, you know, I mean, what was then a warning is now a description of what's happening. And it's really important to pay attention to the people now giving that warning most loudly. There's a few people around the world who are, on the one hand, have a global platform, and on the other hand, are less tied down to vested interests than other leaders. So one of them is the Secretary General of the UN, as close to a, as close to a kind of a spokesman for the world as, we've got. And he has been talking about this, not in diplomatic language, but he's the chief diplomat on planet Earth, but in the most straightforward, he said last week, anticipating the arrival of this IPCC report, he said to the fossil fuel industry, your core product is our core problem, okay? That's as straightforward and strong as it's possible to get. And there are, a few handful of others with a big platform and the same kind of freedom. One of them is the Pope, who has been incredible and outspoken on this issue from the start. We heard yesterday a message from Greta Thunberg, who's another person and who was instrumental in helping us launch Third Act in the first place. And she was saying, thanks everybody and go for it on tomorrow. Those are the people who have the kind of freedom to speak as plainly as it's possible to speak. It's painful to watch the contortions that other good leaders have to go through because of the wretched politics of this issue. It was painful to watch the president approve this massive oil project in Alaska last week. It just, and to feel as if he had no political choice but to do so. Our job is to open up the space to make sure that he and others feel that they do not have to make those kind of fateful compromises, that they have the permission and space and opening to do what I think they know we absolutely have to do. But that's our job, to open up that space and to do it as fast and powerfully as we can.
Could you talk about the worst banks? The banks, the role of the banks.
Yes, I should have talked about that all along. The 4 banks that we're visiting tomorrow, and it was very nice of them to arrange them in order down the street, Wells Fargo, Chase, Citibank, Bank of America, are the 4 largest banks in the world, and they're also the 4 biggest lenders to the fossil fuel industry in the world. They have shamelessly continued to pour money into this industry, even though at this point it's utterly clear that the oil companies and the others have no intention of slowing down, of changing their behavior, of doing anything different. They're hard to move, but not impossible to move. The biggest bank by assets in Europe, HSBC, buckled in December when they announced that they would no longer lend to people who were opening new oil and gas fields. That's not everything we need, but that's a big step in the right direction and a strong signal. And our job is to get these guys moving in the same direction. Their excuse at the moment is, well, some attorney generals or treasurers in Oklahoma and Louisiana will give us a hard time if we do the right thing. Okay, that's not a very good excuse, and our job is to make it clear that our side of this has as much power to produce discomfort for them or more than the bad guys, and we do. Our electoral system is obviously rigged and weighted to favor red states and red counties and everything else, and they die away. But most of the money in this country is in the blue parts of America. And if we can rally that money, then and very good signs. I saw some tweets today from Brad Lander, the comptroller of the city of New York, who's got more money in his bank than all those red state treasurers combined, and he's talking about rallying all the other progressive states to do the same kind of thing. If we make a strong statement tomorrow, that gets much easier for them to do. Our job tomorrow is to try and start cementing in people's minds this nexus between cash and carbon. Because it's not quite as easy for people's minds as, like, Exxon's clearly bad, right? That's only one. I mean, Exxon, you can easily tell it because Exxon digs stuff up and sets it on fire, and that's what causes climate change. So Citibank is one beat removed away from that. They provide the money that lets them dig up the stuff and set it on fire. That's the story we have to tell tomorrow and going forward. And if we do, we have very strong ways to put pressure on them. And it became, though obviously we couldn't have planned the timing of this, it became all the more important and all the more obvious with the banking events of the last couple of weeks. These four banks have gotten even bigger, and in essence, they're quasi-public institutions now. Because absolutely everybody knows, I mean, the reason they're getting bigger is because it's utterly clear that the taxpayer will back them up no matter what. I mean, as usual, they've privatized the profit and socialized the risk from the banks. So we all get to assume the risk going forward. But the biggest of those risks is this climate risk. It's not even a risk, the guarantee that of trouble that we face. So that's the line of argument. And, eventually it will win out. The problem, as always with climate change, is the eventual. Unlike all the other political problems, or almost all the other political problems that we've dealt with and worked on and organized around, this one has a very sharp time limit. Like, I've spent my life, watching and participating sometimes in the debate over health care for all in this country. And I think it's an absolute sin that we don't have it yet, and that people die and go bankrupt every year because of that. And I assume that the day will someday come when we join every other industrialized nation on earth in providing it. And when we do, it won't be much harder to do it because we delayed. Climate change isn't like that. Once the Arctic melts, there's not a plan for how you freeze it back up again. There's this series of one-way ratchets of points that we are now moving past in rapid order. That's what this IPCC report was about today. And it said we've got a few years left to make very, very dramatic shifts, or else we are in an entirely different and new world. So, yeah, that's.
Hey, so it's tough enough to get our Democratic friends to do the right thing. What the hell was wrong with the Republicans?
That's I don't even, I mean, you know, that's a 3 doctoral theses and, you know, I don't have I mean,
What's
the,
right with the Republicans?
the question, I mean, but it's a very important question that large parts of our society have kind of broken with reality. And in this case, it couldn't be more obvious. I mean, it's one thing to argue about things that you have moral debates over, or to argue about economic policy, because we don't exactly know there's, you know, what like the answer. But physics isn't like that. You know, physics is something that we should be able to.
Votes too.
Well, that too. So obviously we can't count on the Republican Party at this point for anything. The IRA, a modest business-focused bill that operated entirely on tax credits, got not a single Republican vote in either the House or the Senate. So that's the situation where we are. And it probably doesn't seem any huge sign of it changing anytime soon, you know. But it will be quite unreal if we have the governor of Florida running for president, ignoring climate change at the precise moment that his state is sinking beneath the rising ocean. You know? I mean, sooner or later, reality will assert itself, but again, later is the problem because there's no recovery.
Sitting at Citibank in my rocking chair this afternoon, one thing that was very encouraging is a number of people who came up and said, gee, I don't have money here, but I'm wondering about my bank. And I thought that was really great. And then someone else asked a question I didn't know the answer to, which was they said, we heard that McKibben guy arranged for an appropriation from Congress for heat pumps for Ukraine. And I said, really? And he said, what was the result of that? And
Thanks,
the
Bill.
whole Biden thing right now in the Arctic, you know, it seems like such hypocrisy that the Europeans have given up so much. Could you say?
I will. I'll tell you that story because it was a good story and it was the first real victory that Third Act managed to produce. The day after the invasion of Ukraine, when everyone was, you know, talking about sending tanks and bombs, whatever, what I wrote just a column said, heat pumps for peace and freedom. One of them, I mean, look, the most obvious reason to hate fossil fuel at this point is that it's destroying the climate. But that's not all it does. As Akaya Winwood pointed out yesterday in this wonderful little video she made for this thing today, we now know that about 1 death in 5 on this planet comes from people breathing the byproducts of fossil fuel combustion, the particulates. If you've been to Delhi or Shanghai in recent years, that shouldn't come as a surprise, but it's true in this country too. Lots and lots of people, especially people who have to live near refineries and highways and things. But the third reason to be really desperately want to get off fossil fuel is that as long as we depend on a fuel source that's only available in a few places, the people who live in those places are going to end up with, who control those sources, are going to end up with huge power they haven't earned. So in this case, the Koch brothers, our biggest oil and gas barons, they use their winnings to degrade and deform our democracy. The king of Saudi Arabia, you know, or Vladimir Putin. That's all he's got is oil and gas. Look around your house tonight. Try to find something made in Russia that you could boycott, you know, to show your displeasure with the now indicted international war criminal. Unless you have an old bottle of Stolichnaya in the liquor cabinet, I reckon you will find nothing that you could. So, when the invasion happened, we said, obviously, Putin's going to try and use his control over the oil and gas taps to Europe to wage this war. And we can stop that. if we get enough good, clean energy technology in the hands of Europeans fast enough, it deprives him of one of these weapons. And the heat pump is the perfect example of this kind of technology. It's a wonderful piece of technology, and we have big excess capacity to produce it in this country, because all it basically is an air conditioner that kind of runs in reverse, and all the guys who make air conditioners know how to do it. And so we said, let's try and get some money. Let's try and use this Defense Production Act, which is normally used for weaponry, to also be used for this. And to their credit, the White House listened, because Third Act and others started bombarding them with messages and things. And we ended up with a $250 million appropriation within about 90 days for this Heat Pumps for Freedom campaign, which is good. It's a start, you know, and a signal for what we can be doing. And people in Europe did a good job this winter of energy conservation, of trying to switch where they could, and they got through the winter. Putin's weapon fizzled, and we need to keep that happening. The good news is, those are the three big reasons to avoid fossil fuel: autocracy, congestive lung failure, and the climate crisis. Okay. The good news is, we happen to be alive at a moment, and it really is a brand new moment, when it's entirely possible to imagine ending combustion, period, on planet Earth in the lifetime of the people in this room. The price of renewable energy dropped so fast and so far in the last decade that we now live on a planet where by far the cheapest way to produce power is to point a sheet of glass at the sun. We are used to thinking of solar energy and wind energy as alternative power, the sort of like the Whole Foods of energy, as opposed to the Safeway of energy, whatever. That's not true anymore. This is the obvious stuff to be using, and we would be quickly making this conversion were it not for inertia, which is always a force in human affairs, and much more the vested interest of people whose entire business model is dependent on digging stuff up and setting it on fire. Human beings have been burning stuff for 700,000 years. It was one of the things that made us who we are. It let us learn how to cook food. It let us move north and south from the equator. The anthropologists gathering around the campfire at night over eons was to help develop the kind of social bonds that make us. And when we got to the Industrial Revolution and learned to control the combustion of coal and gas and oil, that made modernity. I mean, it made us rich. But the costs of that are now dramatically outweighing the benefits. And the good news is that, I'm a Methodist Sunday school teacher, so, the good Lord was kind enough to hang a large ball of burning gas 93 million miles up in the sky, and we now have the wit to make absolutely full use of it. And why would we not? But that's the thing to understand about this contest that we're in with the oil companies and the banks and things. If you're Exxon, or the people who've made a fortune lending to Exxon, the fact that the sun delivers power for free every day when it rises above the horizon, that's the dumbest business model of all time. You've gotten paid every month for 100 years to deliver another quantity of energy to people's basements or bunker. The last thing you want is the sun doing it for free. And that's why they fight so hard. And that fight is about absolutely every part of this conversion, even though we know now what to do and how to do it. So our job is to keep spreading that. This is going to happen. Economics does work. 50 years from now, we're going to run the world on sun and wind, because it's pretty close to free and gets closer every day. But if it takes us 40 years to get there, then the world that we run on sun and wind is going to be a broken world. So our job, the entire job of the environmental movement in this regard, is just to catalyze this reaction, to make it happen much faster than it otherwise would, to force the spring, to whatever your metaphor, to speed up this process and that's precisely what the IPCC said today. One of the chief scientists said, we need to be sprinting and we are walking. So our job, what we're doing tomorrow, is just out there with a stick poking at the back of these people saying, speed the hell up, make this happen, do it now, because we can't see what's coming. And that's what the battle's all about, pace.
Hey Bill, Julia Benjamin, good to see you. You brought up Ukraine, and given that what has actually happened is that the U.S. gas and oil companies have taken advantage of the Russian sanctions to increase production and get record profits, and given the possibility of a nuclear war and all other ways that this war is so disastrous for the environment, wouldn't it be good for you and environmental groups to join us in the peace movement by pushing for ceasefire and negotiations?
Well, our sense is, my sense is, I mean, that's not something that we work on it, but my sense is that the most useful thing to be doing is precisely what we're doing, trying to move everybody as fast as possible off the thing that's funded this war. And my favorite ally in this work for the last year, more than a year, has been an old colleague from 350 Days, a woman named Svetlana Romanko, who started this organization called Together We Stand. She's Ukrainian. And she went to work after she worked at 350. She worked for what we then called the Global Catholic Climate Movement, now called the Laudato Si movement, spreading out across the Catholic world this message. And then when the bombs started falling on Ukraine, her response was to move hard and fast to try and get Europe in particular to move quickly towards renewable energy. She was just down in last week in Houston was the sort of big energy, oil and gas meetings. They call it the Davos of energy. And she was supposed to go there and talk, but they figured out who she was before she got there. And when she showed up, they pulled her credential and said she couldn't come in the door. She and I wrote a piece about it immediately and got the word out. But that's, I think, the best possible outcome of what's happening right now. I think that we need to stand up to Putin because I think he is a war criminal and because I think he's invaded another country and it's incredibly hard to watch. But I think that the most powerful way to stand up to him, to take that fight, is to do this work to get off the one thing that he has. And if the world didn't run on fossil fuel, A, he wouldn't be able to wage war, and B, Russia would then come up with some other way to run their country other than a kind of oil kleptocracy. Oil's been a curse like that in almost every country where it exists. There's a couple of exceptions. Norway is always the exception to every rule in this world, but Russia's much like the rule. So I'm actually really proud of this work we've been doing around things like heat pumps, and I hope that we keep it up. Sure.
What's the, I went to Cairo and like what you said about the pollution is, within 3 days I was sick with bronchitis and it was the winter. I can't even imagine going there in the summer. Why does the Biden administration or any Democratic government done something to control or to test methane emissions? Because this stuff's 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide. These people say, oh, well, it only lasts in the atmosphere 12 years, and then it breaks down. It breaks down into carbon dioxide, Why haven't they just flown drones over all of the pipelines and all of the manufacturing, gas and oil plants, and then just make them fix those? Because
you know the answer to that, because the fossil fuel industry has been powerful enough to keep it from happening. it's changing. There's money in the IRA and in the infrastructure bill to go and work on methane. But that's the way that we've decided, the Biden administration and others have decided that the only political way they can do this is not with sticks, but with carrots, you know? And it's expensive and slow and at some level it's absurd. I mean, these guys have been committing crimes for a long time and they know it and we know it, but their political power, at least for the moment, is such that that's how we're gonna do it. So that's why we build movements. I mean, the point of the work we're doing tomorrow is, in the short run, to take on these banks and so on. But in the slightly larger sense, the work that we always do, no matter what it is, whether we're fighting the Keystone Pipeline or divesting college campuses or working on Line 3 or doing this, the work is always to shift the zeitgeist so that it becomes both possible and then mandatory for our leaders to do the right thing. And we've gotten partway there, you know. I mean, it was actually fairly amazing last year to watch. Remember, Jim Hansen testified before Congress in 1988 told them everything that was going to happen, okay? In some of the most famous congressional testimony ever. It took 34 years for Congress to act. But when they finally did, say what you will about the Democratic Party, and there's an awful lot to be said about it, it was somewhat inspiring to see that they managed to hold every single person in their party in the Senate, which was a good thing because they had literally nobody to spare in order to pass. And though I'm mad as hell at Biden at the moment about what happened up in Alaska, I'm also clear that he's swimming against a very powerful stream. And our job is to just keep breaking that current as much as we can to get it flowing the other way. You know, at some level, even the best politicians, I mean, there's a few exceptions, you know. I mean, I'm a Vermonter, but he says, you know, say the right thing forever and always will. For the most part, politicians are exquisite meteorological instruments designed to register shifts in how fast, how hard the wind is blowing in what direction, okay? Which is, you know, sad at some level. We wish that they were all, you know, Martin Luther King. But at another level, it's good because it means that if we make the wind blow in the right direction, then there's some chance that they will move. We have to do it because if we don't, the extraordinary power of money wins every single time. I mean, that's the wind that's always blowing in our political system. And it's always going to win unless we figure out how to overcome it by organizing people. That's all we can do. So that's what we're doing.
Do you think Biden's approval of that whole project was maybe because of Sullivan's argument that we're buying oil from Venezuela? There's 18 times more polluting than an American.
I think Biden's approval of that thing was mostly because he's scared that people are going to be talking about gas prices while he's running for re-election, even though this has no more effect on gas prices than it, you know. But that's so, you know, that's, I think, basically what drove it, and that's sad. And again, I mean, our job is to make that change. And one of the good things that's happening right now is that almost in real time, you can see gas prices, how they're going to become not the most salient political issue in American life. You know, we're headed towards quite quickly a country that's going to be 20-25% something EVs within a very, now you can make lots of, we can talk for a long time about whether or not that's a good idea and all the problems that come with one. But the good thing about EVs is, if once you have one, gas prices are never going to bother you again. You know? And the single most kind of regressive political force that there is in the country starts to disappear. And that'll be a very good and useful day as that happens. If for no other reason, that's a good thing about the fact that these vehicles are rolling out fast.
How do you view Elon Musk and his role in all this?
How does one view Elon Musk and his role in all of this? Let's be clear, Elon Musk did not invent electric cars or anything else. There was a period when he was doing a pretty good job of driving quick change. That period, I mean, his usefulness is in that world is, if it was necessary at one point, it no longer is. There are 40 car companies busily trying to do this and increasingly doing a better job at it than he is. And he's now become, obviously, a malign force in every other possible way on this planet. And to watch, I mean, it's not like Twitter was ever a wonderful part of the human experience, but it was a useful part for a long time. For organizers, it was a very useful tool. It allowed cheap, quick, widespread communication in a way that we hadn't had before. But he's managed to basically wreck it in the course of 6 months, and under the premise that he was opening up a town hall, and that's what we needed. As I say, I live in Vermont. It's March, so we just had our annual town meeting in our town, where we decide, all the things that it's the closest thing to direct democracy that still exists on this planet. And if you operated it like Twitter, it wouldn't, like Twitter at the moment, you just couldn't do it, because it's all just people screaming insults. That's not a town hall, that's not a public forum. In fact, I'm always struck when we have town meetings, if someone like Donald Trump appeared there and started to just stand up and insult people, and everyone would just after 2 or 3 minutes, they'd just say, okay, we've heard you, sit down now, it's time for other people to talk, we have serious business to do here, what are you doing, we have to figure out whether we need a new roof for this school. We do not have time to listen to you, carry on about all your things, thank you, and that's what Twitter and things are going to is difficult, I think, and we're going to have to figure out some ways to replace them for organizing tools because they've been useful. We will, but this is incredibly fun. I've got to get out and join the vigilers out there. But
you're walking down to 14th and New York.
Yep. Good.
You can stay all night.
Yep.
So you have to leave.
Yep.
Okay. And here's what happens tomorrow. At 9:30 at Franklin Park, there's a prayer circle, an interdenominational prayer circle, a religious gathering. At 10 o'clock, they will have a walk of hope around the 4 banks, the short march that we'll do later on in the day. If you want to join that, join them at 10 o'clock. If you're not doing that, you must show up by 11:15 to hear
Mandatory.
the U-line. And I want to say I did not do Joe's service. Joe Uline founded the Labor Network for Sustainability, among other things, in a lifetime of work in this struggle, which is the organization that's trying to, very difficult struggle to move unions into a broader agenda of fighting for good jobs, but fighting for good jobs in a sustainable economy.
And Joe has been
That's
there.
what he's doing.
Joe has been there at absolutely every stage in this fight for a
He was with
very,
you for a
very
week at the
long time.
pipeline.
Absolutely, man. No, we've been to jail together. We've done an awful lot of things over the years.
At least 2 people are on the organizing committee with me. Lawrence McDonald, who's our comms person and so forth, and we have interest from all the major outlets. We're going to have some great stories. While we were sitting here, we heard that NBC National is going to interview Ben tomorrow.
There you go.
There you go. So, but especially in addition, I want to acknowledge Christiane Reeder, who's sitting here,
All the art that you see tomorrow, the incredible art, the puppets and everything else, she did.
And I want to say something about that. I want to say something about that. From the beginning of this thing, and the beginning of third act, we have thought that art and music were absolutely key parts of this. The environmental movement's been way better at appealing to whichever half of the human brain it is that likes bar graphs and statistical tables than the more visceral human part of, and that's why it's been so important. And so thank you enormously.
And Jan Berger.
There you
Jan
go.
Berger.
Yes.
And David Solnit back on the
Yes.
West Coast, who's been, just churning out amazing art and amazing music.
So come at 11:15, Joe's playing. At 11:45, we start the rally.
And you know what?
And then we march, yeah.
And we march. This is not only is this one of the first big displays of, older people sort of pushing this fight and being out in front for a day and things. It's also one of the very few times that we've tried to organize a big set of demonstrations on a Tuesday. Okay? So let's make it clear that it works. Exactly right. Exactly right. So this is our chance to demonstrate what comes when you have a little bit of spare time on your hands. Idle hands are the Angels Workshop, man, and we've got some good work to do. So on we go. Thank you. And finally, I want to thank Andy Shalal and Busboys for arranging this and for sending out to their lists of 100,000 people notices of this and what we're doing tomorrow. However, that means we must leave soon because this room is being used for a poetry contest at 8 o'clock. So we have to rush out, but that's it for the evening. See you tomorrow morning.